Cool. So this is transferring your knowledge effectively. Just as a heads up, so Jamison already talked a lot about this, but I'm a software engineer at Derivita. Today I'm going to be leaning heavily in this presentation into my Master's of Education in Educational Psychology. So this is definitely not a tech-heavy presentation. If that's what you're looking for, I won't feel bad if you leave now. But it's mostly soft skills we're going to talk about today. Okay, so the scenario and our goal for the day, this presentation, really comes into some of this stuff. Common tasks that you might do when you're asked to do something at your job that might be important to do. So these are things like pairing with someone, showing them how to do something, training a team on a new technology. Maybe it's just any of those type of things. Maybe like things that I've done in my past. I've done accessibility trainings. I've done testing trainings. I've talked about JavaScript features and all this stuff. When you get to a company of sufficient size, either it's too small to hire someone outside to come in and help, or it's too large that you can just use your internal staff to do all of those things. You'll end up doing some sort of training at some point in time. So today I'll probably use the word student a lot. That could be a peer reviewers, that could be an attendee in a presentation or workshop. Really, it's anyone. A lot of the language is around like teachers and students. So that's kind of what I'll say a lot of times, but just keep in mind that that's what you can think of. But so how can we do this effectively, these tasks that we're asked to do? How do we do that? So my goal today is to give you some ideas and some knowledge about those things. So as we navigate the complexity of the mind today, that's the question to keep in mind is, how can this help me effectively help other people to learn and grow? Okay, so what is learning? That is the first thing, we just get that out of the way. So learning is generally defined as relatively permanent changes in behavior. So a key feature is permanence. It's really important that that's something that you keep in mind with that. So temporary things like you're shown an MFA code and you memorized that and then you typed it in or whatever. That's a temporary thing. It's not a permanent thing that you'll remember forever. Or if like someone said, hey, let's write down a phone number or something to call me back if we get disconnected on the phone or something. You're not learning that, you're just jotting it down or you're keeping it in mind, very temporary. Also, it's not like normal development things. So like you wouldn't say you learned how to sneeze when you got a cold. It's just something that happened. So you didn't learn that, it's just development happens and that's what happens. It's not actual learning, it's just growth. Okay, so we have a problem because experts have a problem when they know subject matter so well that they have this problem. It's that they forget what knowledge level other people have. Sometimes this is called an expert bias or the curse of knowledge. So this is really a thing that can happen to everyone when you get into these sort of situations. So the fun fact is, at something in your life, you are an expert. So an expert in the field isn't always the best teacher. You've probably seen it, I've seen it in my career where you have like a rock star, super amazing engineer, and the company decides, hey, I bet they would be a great manager. And then it turns out that they're not a great manager. And so the same sort of thing can happen with teachers. Just because someone is an expert in a subject doesn't mean they're going to be the best teacher of that subject. Okay. All right. So in the educational psychology world, we talk about learning theories. So learning theories are abstract concepts that are designed to explain how individuals acquire, process, retain, and recall knowledge during the process of learning. Okay. So today I want to talk about 3 different learning theories that I think are pretty influential and ways that these things can work to help us teach other people. Okay, so they're behaviorism, cognitivism, and constructivism are the three that we'll be doing today. Okay, so behaviorism, this uses positive and negative reinforcements to teach behavior. So positive meaning you add something to help learning, negative meaning you're removing something to help learning. And it's often used for classroom management, like, hey, you're being bad in class, a student or whatever, like you're gonna get a detention or your name on the board or that sort of thing. Training pets, the dog does what you want it to do, you give it a treat. And it's also for young kids. A negative reinforcement example, like positive, is really easy to think of. You give someone something, they do something, or they retain that, they get conditioned, right, for that. So positive is pretty simple, straightforward. Negative is when you take something out of the environment to help learning. So a good example of this is like your alarm clock starts ringing in the morning, you get out of bed to stop the alarm clock. That's getting rid of a negative, or getting rid of something in the environment to help that behavior. Same sort of thing when, like, if you're a parent or you've heard like kids crying a lot, they use behaviorism against you because you want the crying to stop, so you give in to whatever they want, and you get conditioned to stop the crying, remove that from the environment. Okay, so later I will talk some about some behaviorism that I've used on coworkers, both at my current job and at my previous job. But one of the craziest examples of behaviorism in practice is back in the 1920s. They did this experiment with this baby his name was Albert, and it's called the Little Albert experiment if you ever look it up. Super unethical, crazy. They took this rat and they showed this kid this rat all the time, and every time they showed him the rat, they took this steel bar and they just banged it with a hammer, so it made this loud noise and it caused him to cry. Well, for like pretty much the rest of his life, Albert was terrified of like small, furry, fuzzy things, everything he did. So super unethical, don't ever do that, but that's like behaviorism, right? So Pavlov's dogs, the Pavlovian response of like salivating and stuff with the sound of a bell, that's some of that as well. Okay, so cognitivism, this is focused on how information is processed and stored in the mind. So you have things like a lot of times when people talk about this, they model the mind as a computer, kind of cool. You have sensory memory, which is like super short-term, fleeting. That's the way something feels. The actual like sound waves hitting your ears, that sort of thing, turns into short-term memory. You can hold it 7 plus or minus 2 things there. And then that gets encoded into your long-term memory and goes from there. Schemas are part of this. So this is like when you learn, like someone says, hey, that's a cow. For the rest of your life, you're going to think, when I see something that looks like that, that's a cow. When I see a loop in a programming language, that's what a loop looks like. The way things are modeled, you store that schema, that example in your mind, you compare everything against it, you refine and enhance that as you go along. Okay, constructivism, this is the idea of like building blocks. So you're gonna have something you already know, you add something new, and that merges to new knowledge in your mind. Okay, when a constructivist classroom or a constructivist example situation is, people are asking lots of questions, there's a lot of group participation, because you're really working on to take the base knowledge you have and add some additional concepts to create new knowledge. Okay, so that's great. These are all theories, all learning theories that we can think about and work with and do different things. But how does that really in practice go to anything that you're doing? So how can you be a better teacher? So one of the first things is to understand the knowledge level of your students and start at that level. I remember at one point in time, I kept going on talking about routers. And I was talking about how routers work in JavaScript and stuff, and this engineer leans over to me and he's like, hey, like, isn't that the thing that I'm using on my network? And I was like, whoa, wait a second, different kind of router. And I realized that I needed to get to a different level because this was an engineer who didn't normally do front-end code and had no idea that there was even a router in JavaScript code that we work with. Define keywords and ideas that might be unfamiliar. So I do a lot of training about accessibility, work with lots of people in my current company about accessibility. One of the things that I always have to define for people are the voiceover keys. Like, I know what the voiceover keys are. I say voiceover keys. I expect people to know what voiceover keys are, but a lot of people don't. It's Control-Option pressed together on the keyboard. So I have to get that out of the way to begin with so people understand how to use voiceover. So you want to structure your training in a way that builds. Start with simple concepts and build into it. You don't want to start with this like super advanced server rendering, whatever the new hotness is. You want to start with, hey, this is a script tag, and this is how it gets on the page. We go from there. And that applies to everything. So you really want to try to break down what you have into the smallest parts you can and work from there. Now, don't start at the very basics if you don't reasonably understand that the people you're teaching or working with have that level. Like, no one wants to sit through something that they already know forever and ever. So find, before you start, where you want to be, what the level of people are. Start there, and then go forward. Avoid language that potentially causes harm. Like, don't say things like, clearly this is the way this works, or obviously this happens like this, because I guarantee you for at least one person in the room, chances are it's not obvious and it's not clear. So try your best to like eliminate that from any of your training, any of the things you're doing when you're pairing, because like I said, they may not understand that. You want to go back and work with that. Now, use confusion and further learning. Confusion is one of the greatest tools for teaching. So you let someone get confused, simmer on that, think about it, let them be confused and try to work through it. And then, once they've done that for a little bit, you get them to the right place. Tell them the answer, push them in the right direction, that sort of thing. What that actually does is it creates a stronger bond in the mind about that concept. It'll get encoded into their long-term memory a lot easier if they have this event to refer back to. Okay, so I'm just blazing through this a lot faster than I planned to. Anyway, so the last thing that I want to talk about here is how to foster a culture of learning. So one of the things that I've been privileged to be a part of at both my current company and my previous company are training programs with people. So back at Instructure, I didn't start it, but I really refined it when I started working on it, when I was asked to help out with it. But we had a program called Avocode. And so this was a bi-weekly, all-volunteer training program at Instructure. The organizers, we were volunteer with it. I mean, obviously we still worked there, but we took time to build the program. We took time to find people to sign up. It was all there. People were optional to attend. It wasn't a required thing, almost like a lunch and learn or something like that, but it wasn't during lunch. It was a regularly scheduled meeting, optional, all of that stuff. So I used some behaviorism. So we used cookies. We would bake cookies in the oven, and we would give that out to everyone who came, get a cookie. And sometimes we change it up. We did donuts, we did root beer floats, but things to entice people. So, and then we noticed that we still weren't getting a lot of participation from speakers. So we were like, well, how do we make that better? So we printed up, we had one of the designers in Instructure make this cool pixelated avocado sticker, and we started giving those out to presenters. So it was, if you presented, you got to get this sticker. The next thing you know, we had 6 months of presentations all lined up, ready to go. Everyone wanted to get that sticker. It was really cool. So when I left Instructure and I went to Derivita, we didn't have anything like this. Much smaller company. I was like the 7th engineer there. Wasn't much going on. So we decided to do this anyway. So we came up with the Mind Mingle program, which AI told me to call it Mind Mingle, so that's what we went with. It's kind of fun. And so it's the same sort of thing. Volunteer sign up to present, optional meeting for everyone to attend. Now, I printed a bunch of these stickers. I've got one on my laptop here, but this is the Get Stag, which also was an AI creation. So the story of this, one of the engineers that I work with, he was going to give a presentation at a Mind Mingle about the Git DAG, the directed acyclic graph, like how Git actually does all this stuff. And so someone misheard him and thought he said Git stag. And next thing you know, we're punching this thing into Dolly and generating all these images. And they were like, whoa, this one's so cool. We should put it on a t-shirt. We never actually made the t-shirts, but when I was trying to figure out some incentive to get people to sign up and present at Mind Mingles, the Git Stag came back up and made an appearance. So now at Derivita, if you present at a Mind Mingle, you get a sticker of the Git Stag, and that's the only way to get it. So this is one of those behaviorism things, trying to get people involved and do this. But doing programs like this are a way to really foster a culture of learning, because the idea of these programs isn't to teach on a certain thing that we use at the company. It's not to even be focused on any like technology thing. It's really just an opportunity for someone to teach us about something that they know a lot about. We had one person give a really awesome presentation about concrete and cement mixing, and it was like fabulous, really cool. Opportunity for him to teach people, opportunity for other people to learn. It was just great. So, okay, so I've covered a bunch of different concepts. Now, a recommendation, and this will be my last slide, is this book, Make It Stick, The Science of Successful Learning. All of this stuff that I've talked about, really, this book does a great job of summing it up. It's an incredible book. I probably could have skipped going and getting a master's degree if I had just read this. It's a phenomenal book. So I highly recommend it. It's great. It talks about how to learn from a student perspective. It talks about how to teach, both like K-12, higher ed, as well as like adult learning, which is mostly what we're doing. That's what this is. So anyway, thank you very much, and I hope you have a good rest of your day here at UtahJS.